Thank you very much indeed to the panelists, and thank you very much, Tudor, for your excellent moderation. Let us turn our eyes, if you want, when we talk about off-takers, lead markets. We heard about the industry. Let's turn our eyes into the transport, into the other, if you want, part of off-takers, if you want. And I would like to now invite on next to me on stage Mr. Georgios Tzamalis. He is representing also European Commission from DG Move side, from the DG Transport side, Directorate General for Transportation. And I think you will have the pleasure, Georgios, to moderate this excellent panel on transport side. So, pleasure is mine, please.
Thank you, Mirella. It's a pleasure being here to this very successful event, which has been running now for a couple of years already. And yes, as you very well know, that the mobility sector is one of the sectors that its emissions have been increasing through time and not decreasing, and therefore there have been, actually we have been, from the EU side, we have been putting specific measures in order to reverse this trend. For example, the one related with hydrogen is the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation that sets specific goals for hydrogen refueling stations in TEN-T corridors. This also shows how important, the importance of hydrogen for as one of the technological solutions for the decarbonization of the mobility of the transport sector. Hydrogen valleys it's an important instrument that can showcase, let's say, the potential of hydrogen for decarbonizing the mobility sector, and also showcase particular solutions in a complete ecosystem. Therefore, I think in this session we'll try to explore how this can be done and try to see with some concrete examples. Now I would like to have the pleasure to welcome the first distinguished speaker is Madame Céline Questier. She's working in the region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and she's involved in the coordination of the IMAGHyNE Hydrogen Valley project. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this occasion to present IMAGHyNE. So I'm Céline Questier. I'm part of the coordination team for the IMAGHyNE project that is led by the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. So it's the green button. Yes, yeah. So here's a map so you can see where we are in Europe. So Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, our valley, is situated in the southeast of France, and the valley is really centered in our region. Although we have some partners in Europe, in Spain, in Italy, and also associate partners in Portugal, Switzerland, but it's really the ecosystem is really centered on the region. And yes, so we are a large-scale valley. So we were winner of the 2023 call from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. So the project started in January 2024. So now it's 18 months we've been going into the project. And we used to say that for us it's a change of scale because we had a first project on hydrogen centered on mobility called Zero Emission Valley. And that was really, I mean, we didn't start from scratch with this the valley. But the idea was to extend, not only have mobility uses, but also industry and energy, and cover the whole value chain. And also taking advantage of the really rich ecosystem we have in our region. So I take just a few moments to tell you about Zero Emission Valley, because it's really important related to mobility, and it really explains where we started from. So Zero Emission Valley, it was a project started in 2018, now finished. And we had the CEF funding for, at the same time, building a network of stations, refueling stations in the region, and at the same time giving grants so that the vehicles could be more affordable. And to be noted, there was a European funding for the vehicle, but also regional funding to make it more interesting. And in addition, we had, so it was more centered on light mobility, this first project, but we also had additional funding from the state to develop heavy mobility. So that was a little look back into this first project, but now, so you see on the map what our valley looks like. So as I said, we had already this network of stations. It's not completely finished, but by the end of 2025, we should have 12 stations in the region. So we cover the whole value chain. So we have a few production projects, production of H2 by electrolyzers. We have also H2 storage in salt cavern in the north of the region. And we have, we have industry uses, but we have many uses in mobility. So mostly heavy mobility with coaches, buses, and trucks. And also a specificity, we have a specific ecosystem, so to say, around the airport in Lyon, where they develop a station, and the aim is to have the ground support equipment in the airport supplied by H2, and also have a project on having an emergency generator powered by hydrogen. So some key figures to sum up. So we are quite a strong partnership, 35 partners now, because it's evolving a little bit. And the aim of the goal to have 4,000 tons a year of renewable hydrogen. So that was a general presentation of IMAGHyNE, but I will focus more on the mobility end uses. As you can see on the screen, we have many partners who are off-takers in the mobility field, and so we have. So it's a good thing we have so many, because I would go back to that later. But there are some changes. But as I said before, so most of it is heavy mobility. So buses, we have different. We have Keolis, who runs buses for a city in the west of the region. We have trucks for goods transportation. We have buses also for companies for transport. I have to mention also the region itself that has coaches for its regional authority for transport, regional transport. So we also are committed to develop coaches. That's the most uses for mobility. We have some more exotic uses like snow groomers or tractors. So the achievements so far, so we're only 18 months into the project, so but we are really proud to see that it's really going to getting tangible now. So we have already buses in operation in Clermont-Ferrand. We will have the first truck that will be delivered. I mean, they will have a ceremony next week in Lyon, so we're really happy with that for the first truck, co-financed by the project. And for the regional coaches, we will have 16 that will be in operation really, really soon. So we do see some things happening on the roads of the region. But, of course, we do have challenges, and I tried to summarize most of these, but it's not a surprise, is a lack of demand. I will take an example. I was showing you on the map, we had one of the off-takers. It was a company that was going to lease 150 more light-duty vehicles, and they wanted to leave. I mean, they are leaving the project because they don't have the clients. I mean, they said, no, we will not focus on hydrogen anymore. It's too early, too difficult, I don't know. So that's quite a big hole in our number of vehicles, but trying to find ways to replace. Also to mention not only the lack of demand, but also the lack of availability sometimes of the vehicle. And we experienced that also with our Zero Emission Valley project, where it's crazy because we had grants from Europe, we had grants from the region, but the project ends and we have to finish everything and the vehicles will not be there. So it's an occasion, really an occasion lost. We had the off-takers there. And sometimes it's the question of technical, economical viability that is not there. It's more of an anecdote, but our snow groomers I was mentioning, it won't happen because the company said no, it's too complicated, too early. And we know in some other fields it's difficult. They haven't gave up, but it's difficult. And also, maybe I can add something that is specific to France, but we had a new national strategy on hydrogen, and it's people consider it's not really a good signal for mobility. I mean, it's more of a niche, and it's more focusing on the industry. So, but anyway, if I can summarize, it's as a lot of you said already, it's not easy. But we are quite confident that even though we know there are going to be many changes compared from the plans we had at the beginning, so our objective is that we keep on the objectives of the project, and in the 6 years we will find ways. We already see that we now more focus on heavy mobility. And our aim is to constantly work with the partners or find new partners so that we can manage to fill all the objectives. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Céline, for your very interesting presentation. It gives us a lot of food for thought later for our discussion. I would like now to welcome our three other panelists. So first of all, Mr. Juergen Guldner from Hydrogen Mobility at Scale, HyMoS. Welcome. Björn Skúlason from the Hydrogen Valley in Iceland, HYceland. And Philipp Kroepels from MB Energy. I would like to invite, for instance, to start with Björn, he's on the other end, just to present your activity and your involvement with the HyceLand Valley, and if you want to pass some messages.
Yeah, so thank you for the invite. Iceland has been for quite some time. We opened the first commercial hydrogen station in 2003. And I was still the CEO then of Icelandic New Energy, who is now the coordinator or local coordinator of the HyceLand project. So we've been dealing with different demonstrations in the mobility sector for the last 22 years. Most of them have been successful. There's been a lot of learnings, but there has never been a continuance. And the lack has been to actually find the route to commercial operation of hydrogen infrastructure. So talking to the market, we realized that it was the truck segment which was the highest demand for, and that's the big trucks, the 6x2, 6x4, who have to go over mountains, they have to cross snow, ice, bad weather, windy, and etc. So batteries are complex in those situations and don't fulfill the range and carrying capacity of what the market indicated they wanted. When we found a producer that was willing to produce these vehicles, MAN is producing trucks for us. We are going with IC engines, not because we want them. We would rather like fuel cells, but that's what is available at the moment. So that's where we are going with IC engines, which is good for infrastructure because they burn more fuel, which means that The infrastructure will make more money when they actually start operation, but bad for the OPEX of the operation of the trucks in a sense. So that's I would say, the largest offtake in the Icelandic project or HyceLand project. The goal is to have somewhere between 10 and 20 large trucks. We're also looking into other types of vehicles, actually all or any type of vehicles which fulfill the market demand, for example, like large SUVs, pickup trucks, anything which is 4x4, which battery cannot cope with. So Iceland already has the second largest battery electric fleet in the world, followed by Norway. So the current situation is that 67% of private bought passenger vehicles in Iceland are battery electric. So there is a high demand. And the government has provided quite a good subsidy scheme for all types of zero-emission vehicles, which has now been announced until 2028, which has never happened before, that I know actually what the incentives will be for the next 4 years. So that means a big truck gets 125,000 euros in a subsidy from the government when you buy a new truck, which is something that actually is pushing the market ahead. And with a reasonable fleet of trucks, there is stakeholders willing to build these stations and the infrastructure to produce the green hydrogen. So that's the main driving force in Iceland. And the grid, of course, is 100% renewable, and 80% of the total energy consumption in Iceland is based on renewables, which is probably one of the highest on the planet. So now we just have to convert some trucks and some buses and some coaches and some ships. And there, I think hydrogen has a very important role in all of these aspects.
Thank you for this positive note, highlighting the role of hydrogen in the mobility ecosystem of Iceland. And I will now want to pass to Juergen, who has been working with mobility stakeholders, coordinating them on different capacities. And what I would like to see is, from your experience, what business cases do you see for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in general, in particular actually, and in which specific use case you see the greatest potential?
Thank you. Thank you very much. In my day job, I actually work for BMW, and the HyMoS project is kind of my evening job. And I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. This is the first announcement, so to speak, of the HyMoS initiative. And I deliberately chose this location here because Valerie and I kind of sat together, I think, a year and a half ago or so, also here in Brussels at the Hydrogen Week, and came up with this idea to do this. Just briefly, why and what are we trying to do? We see a lot of demonstration projects, and today and yesterday we heard a lot of hydrogen valleys having mobility applications with a few trucks, a few buses, and struggling to really get into the business case. We talked about vehicle availability and so on. And what we're trying to do is, over, let's say, the next 5 years, to really take it in the mobility sector from demonstration to scale. And to a scale, to answer your question about the business case, to a scale where the business case makes sense for the end user, those who operate the trucks, the buses, but we also see a demand on light-duty vehicles, and also in the private vehicle sector, we see a lot of demand for hydrogen vehicles actually from the public. And to pave the way, we need scale. And the scale means that the vehicles have to be there, the infrastructure, that means the fueling stations have to be there, and in the mobility sector, the fueling station network is kind of the backbone that we have on the industrial side with the pipelines. Here it's the fueling station network, and we talked a lot about having backups, having redundancy, having reliability of the stations as well as a basis. And this is the only way we can get into a business case that works for the hydrogen production, for the hydrogen fueling stations, and for the end users as well as the vehicle manufacturers at the end of the day. And just to give you a scale, what it takes is for, let's say, a metropolitan area or city to have at least 10, 15, maybe 20 fueling stations that are loaded with offtake. And yes, especially in the beginning, the offtake will come from commercial vehicles like the trucks and the buses, because they have a much higher consumption. But the fueling stations should be built such that they can serve all types of vehicles, because the light-duty vehicle demand will follow very shortly, because the demand is there. So what we're trying to do is to build those mobility ecosystems in metropolitan areas, because that's where we see the highest demand in terms of population density, traffic, and so on. Starting with Germany and then obviously expanding to surrounding countries. We're doing this in a, let's call it a coalition of the willing. We're not a joint venture, we're not even a valley. We're an initiative, and we will not build all the stations ourselves, but we're trying to get the demand together. And here, and this has been mentioned a few times already, we have two things. One is we took a stock basically of what projects are there and what valleys are there in the different metropolitan areas in Germany and France and surrounding countries. And we see a lot of areas already where there is an initiative, and there we're trying to support these initiatives. We actually have on Monday next week an event at the airport in Lyon, for example, with hydrogen vehicles that came. Moises is here. We organized that on behalf of the HyMoS project, but also we want to initiate projects in areas and metropolitan areas where there's nothing already. And for that, we're still thinking of how to do that. And the main challenge is the timing aspect, because if you want to build something, especially if there's not much in terms of infrastructure in an area, we have this time lag between the end users wanting the vehicles now, but it takes, as we heard over the last 2 days, 2 to 3 years to build anything. So if I go to someone who wants to operate zero-emission vehicles today and tell them, well, tell me that in 3 years you will buy a hydrogen car or lease a hydrogen truck, a bus, and then operate it for 10 years, no one's going to do that. So we have to solve this time lag issue. And obviously, if anybody has a great idea how to do this, please approach me in the coffee break. Because this is the main challenge that we're facing. We're trying to solve this by obviously starting in areas where there is some base and where we can get things going. Obviously, we need some funding to get over this initial higher prices, both on the hydrogen side and especially on the vehicles. And it's nice to hear that in Iceland there is a support for vehicle purchases.
Thank you very much for highlighting some of the really important challenges, like the time lag, as you mentioned, and the availability, of course, of the HRSs that can really hinder the uptake of hydrogen in the mobility sector. I would like now to, talking about refueling stations, I would like to ask now Philipp, who is, from what I understand, you have been involved in the development of a hydrogen refueling network in Lübeck that is meant to produce 2 tons of hydrogen per day and ending by 2025. And I will ask you now, from your perspective, you can give us some insights and challenges that you are facing. And
Sure, happy to do so. So thanks for having me in the first place. It's a pleasure, it's an honor. My name is Philipp Kroepels, and telling from past experience, it usually pays off to give you a couple of words regarding my employer, IMAGHyNE, because my company is not too well known in the wider industry or in the wider environment, I would say. So IMAGHyNE is Germany's largest importer of conventional fuels and biofuels, 30 million tons plus minus, revenue around 15 billion, classical hidden champion, which operates usually below the radar. We are family owned, based in Hamburg since 1948, third generation. We call ourselves an integrated energy supplier, reason being that we also own storage terminals and approximately 400 diesel stations dedicated for trucks. So there you see already the integration happening. We are essentially the ones moving molecules from A to B, strong focus on liquid fuels, think of diesel, gasoline, heating oil, etc., etc. My role in this company is to replicate the current model to the clean energy products, such as hydrogen, derivatives like ammonia, methanol, SAF, and what else may come looking forward. Regarding hydrogen stations, we have already 3 in Sweden. As said, we have 400 stations in total, all diesel, all dedicated to trucks only. In Germany, you can still refuel your private vehicle there, because otherwise you will be discriminating the private sector, which obviously is not acceptable. But the focus is on trucks. So in Sweden, we have already repurposed 3 of our 80 stations there to also provide hydrogen. And we are just building now our first one in Germany, in Lübeck. And we also plan to buy another one from a project developer this year and develop 5 more next year. Challenges are massive, if I may say so. It's music to my ears that the demand is there. I probably would rephrase, the interest is there. I'm not so sure about the demand, but basically at the right price. Exactly. Now we are talking. It is not so easy, right? The cost for the vehicles are way higher than for the conventional trucks. Cost of hydrogen is way higher. Security of supply. I give an example. In north of Hamburg, in a small city called Neumünster, there is an existing hydrogen refueling station. It was out of product for 2 weeks. Right? That is not the way. It's not our station, just to be very clear. But that's not the way how you increase confidence with end customers, obviously, right? And it shows you how challenging that is. It's not only operating a new station, there are also a lot of issues, but also arranging for the supply. Ideally, even green hydrogen, which makes it even more complicated, is far away from being established. It's not yet a commodity, so also there the industry has to join forces and really bring it forward. I think we have more of the discussion, so I stop here and look forward to the questions. Thank you
very much. I think on your presentation, actually, I was quite impressed because you combined quite a few hydrogen fuel stations from what I read, around 12, and also quite considerable amount of buses, coaches, and also trucks. Now, after hearing all this about the challenges with hydrogen fuel stations and their availability, their reliability, and so on, how does the IMAGHyNE ensure that the hydrogen refueling infrastructure is strategically located, and also to support the daily operations of all these vehicles that are meant to be deployed as part of the whole valley?
Okay, thank you. Do you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so, well, actually, the network of stations were located, they were funded by CEF, so they were located along the strategic corridors anyway, and the approach was very much a territorial approach, meaning that no station could be built, actually, if there was not a minimum of intentions to buy vehicle around, I mean, in the area, in a close area. So there were collection of letters of intention and stuff. So a station could not happen if there was not at least, I mean, it's not an absolute guarantee, but there was this really work on the demand at the same time, I mean, before deciding on putting the station there.
Okay. Do you see this as a model, let's say, that to match the demand with the location of the HRSs as a model that will help a bit?
Well, I don't know if it's a model, but I think it's surely something to take into account before, I mean, to really work at the same time on the demand before putting the station. I think it's essential then, but then it's no guarantee, of course, but I think it should be. You know.
No, thank you. We can go now to the other valley in HYceland. I guess due to the terrain, you have some specificities of your valley that you know that you will have somehow to take it into consideration. From your experience, what factors have been taken into consideration in the design and the deployment of storage and HRS infrastructure in your valley?
Well, as I said in my intro, it's based on that you can go a certain distance within the island in certain weather conditions and certain terrain, which is mainly mountainous, and it's difficult for battery electric vehicles to cope with it. It's also in these rural areas, it's actually not that easy to provide great infrastructure, to provide 2 trucks which are on the road. If we foresee a megawatt charger per truck, and you need many stops in Iceland which are relatively small, you might need 10 or 20 plugs, which is 20 megawatts, and that's actually going to be quite cumbersome to build in the middle of nowhere. And grid is not something that's appreciated by landowners or people, so that's another thing you have to consider when you talk about battery electric versus hydrogen. But the key, when we were evaluating which vehicles, it was mainly to find out where is the market. We know that the operation is going to be more expensive than the conventional diesel trucks, mainly because diesel is too cheap. So that's a very complex issue in the beginning. I mentioned that the government is going to provide subsidies. There's also been an announcement that the CO2 tax on fuels will increase. We will also have a higher kilometer fee on diesel vehicles than on zero-emission vehicles. So the government is pushing quite a lot to actually reduce this difference, mainly to get the cost of fossil fuel to the level it should be at. So that's the main driver. Then, of course, we are going to be having industrial use, but one maybe feature in our project, which has not been mentioned much here, is a little bit look into white hydrogen. There is, of course, geothermal activities in the country, and when you drill for geothermal, you get all kinds of gases out. One of that gas is actually hydrogen. So we know from some of these boreholes you're actually getting about 100 to 200 kilos of hydrogen per day. So if you could actually separate like H2S and other harmful gases away, you could actually use this hydrogen stream, and then it's kind of like suddenly a free energy source coming from the ground. Probably to clean that to a fuel cell level might be complex. So that's again an option for an internal combustion engine, that this is something we would like to test. How dirty can the hydrogen be to actually burn inside an internal combustion engine, so that you don't have to clean it in that sense if you get gas like that.
In terms of hydrogen distribution in your valley, how you distribute, did you face any particular challenges? Or?
Yeah, of course there are, because we are going to be focusing on and around the Reykjavik region in the beginning. So today the truck system works roughly that most of the truck company drive about 250 to 300 kilometers away from the city, and then they turn the truck around and they come back again, so the driver doesn't sleep in a different city. So if you can do that in one go on a hydrogen truck, that's actually what they're searching for. So you need a truck with plus 500 kilometer range in winter conditions. So that's, and to be able to carry at least 40 tons. So that's the goal of the companies who are operating the trucks.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll pass to Juergen. We have been discussing that one of the key, let's say, challenge that we need to face is how to match, let's say, the demand and with the supply. How can OEMs collaborate with the infrastructure providers and build demand that will eventually lead to the creation of a stable ecosystem. From your experience, what do you think should be the way to go? Any suggestion, and what would be the?
First off, let me just comment on something that you said regarding infrastructure for charging is difficult when you have 10 or 20 trucks at one station, because I mean what you experience there will happen all over Europe. And just driving along the highways here, you see many trucks parked, and they all have lunch at the same time and want to fast charge. And there has actually been a study by the partnership, I think it was 3 years ago or so by now, that showed that 2 infrastructures, electric charging and hydrogen fueling stations, is cheaper than doing everything electric. And that's why we have the Auvergne and so on. And we still see that all the time, that electric charging, yes, can be done at some spots with a lot of effort to bring a lot of energy into one place. But then when you try to scale it, simply won't work. Regarding the off-takers, I think especially in the commercial vehicle sector, and we as BMW don't have any trucks, only private vehicles, but what we see is that you actually have to approach those people who commission the logistics. So it doesn't help to go to the logistics company itself. You have to approach those who buy the logistics. And there, at least some companies do have a willingness to pay. And here also the mobility sector can act as a catalyst for the hydrogen economy as such, because the replacement is diesel, and that could be in terms of lower volumes but maybe higher prices, a possibility to grow the hydrogen production compared to other industries where you have huge volumes that you need all of a sudden, and you can only pay very low prices because you're replacing something else that is cheaper than that. But in terms of getting the demand, yes, LOIs, but turning really the interest into actual demand will be the key, and firming that up enough to have then someone to say, okay, if this is the demand, then I'll buy or I'll build the fueling station network, plus secure the demand, can only be done by those companies who actually are buying the logistics in terms of either supermarkets or whoever is transporting something, both on the heavy duty and the light duty sector, rather than approaching the logistics companies themselves, because they have so small margins they can't do it at the moment.
No, thank you. I would like to ask something similar from your perspective, Philipp. What strategies do you see successful in fostering a stronger ecosystem between, let's say, the vehicle OEMs, the refuel infrastructure developers, and also the fleet operators? So, from your perspective,
yeah, first of all, first comment would be a very old-fashioned one. Also, this business is a people business. So if anyone thinks behind a Teams call you can build these ecosystems, that's not going to work. Right? So you really have to sit down with the OEMs, with the hydrogen suppliers, the infrastructure developers, the end customers, etc., and meet them. So that's one. Second, and I don't say this because it applies to my company, but it's a valid success factor. Right now we see quite a few developers stepping out of projects because they can't make the business case happen. And the reason is very simple, because they don't have the established customer access to fleet operators or end customers. They are just project developers. At MV Energy we have 10,000 fleet operators as customers, big ones with 1,000 trucks, small ones with 5 trucks. This one you need to bring to the table, right? That is a fundamental success factor, and other of our competitors have that as well, because you need that demand, right? And if you have these customers, you know how much they fuel with their diesel trucks today, the frequency you know, the location, you have all that data, and that allows you to pick those customers, as you mentioned, which are having potentially the willingness to pay because of the frequency of their travel, food logistics, they have refrigerated, cooled products in the back that requires even more power, that's why battery doesn't work, etc., etc. So that's one. Really to join forces, what we do is, I can't mention the name, but our sales team has joined forces with the sales team of an OEM truck company manufacturer in Germany. So what we do is we approach customers jointly, because this is a complicated sell. It's pretty easy to sell just one diesel truck. This one here is way more complicated. It's also about subsidies, right? Do I have to pay the toll fee in Germany, yes or no? You do have to pay it if it's a combustion hydrogen engine. You don't have to pay it if it's a fuel cell, right? So this is very far away from a standard sales pitch, right? And if you want customers to work with you, you have to have a team on the ground, explain it to them how it can work. And lastly, I hate to say it, but it is subsidies. But I don't think the way it's done today, if I may say so with all due respect, is the right way. Certainly not in Germany. It's way too complicated. There's not one single federal approach. it's broken down by state, sometimes even by municipality. You have programs who finance 25% of the capex, others finance 50%. Again, others force you to place trucks in the region, etc., etc. So it's not easy, but it's the end customer who's going to pay for all of this. So we better get our hands dirty and do a good job in joining forces, selling it, and simplifying also the whole subsidy landscape. I think these are the success factors. There are probably more, but the top ones in my head.
Thank you for the clear message. I would like to open the floor to the audience for any questions, and then we can return for a final round from ourselves. Any questions? Please, Valerie.
Thank you all for your valuable contribution. I'm Valérie Bouillon, the Executive Director of the Clean Hydrogen Partnership. I have a question for the region because I think we don't have that many valleys being coordinated by a region. So I would like how a region, which is the regional political authority, is dealing with different kind of stakeholders, with industries, and how did you manage to put them all on board?
Thank you for the... Is it working? So, sorry. Thank you for the question. Yeah, actually, I think it's quite not typical that it's a region, but it really comes from the history we have in our region. It's not by chance that we have as early as 2018, getting tired. The first zero-emission project coordinated by the region. It's because there is a really strong belief, I mean, a very strong political belief in our region, in our politicians, that hydrogen is a really good way to decarbonize. And we had a hydrogen strategy in 2020, and it's really clearly a strong focus of our regional development. And this is why also, so I was talking about the strategy, but also we have what we called a hydrogen regional committee, where we had most of the stakeholders that are now in the project. They were there already. So actually we managed to gather the partnership quite quick in 2023 when we decided to apply, because we had already, I mean, it was not easy, but we had something that is usually difficult to gather. It was the partnership. And we do have quite a strong ecosystem in our region. Many industrials, many clusters who are really also devoted to hydrogen. So this is all this combination, assets in the region, strong political will, that now conducts the region to coordinate directly this project.
Thank you, Céline. Any other question at the back?
Yes, hi, this is Konstantinos Hatzifotis, coordinator of the Triris Valley. Just to mention that I found very, very pointedly the comments made by Mr. Skúlason. What we really need to show is how hydrogen cars, heavy duty mainly, are competitive in regards of consumption, but also, adapting to the needs of certain regions with electrical cars. And this debate, is going on. We have done our own research, and it shows that, for example, when you're going to buses, with a smaller number of buses, hydrogen buses, you can do the same operational work of electrical buses. So what I would like to say here and propose is to make an effort to show what are the competitive advantages at a certain cases, in certain regions. Of course, Iceland is a bit far away from Greece and the Greek islands, but I see many similarities. So this is what we have to, to try to show. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that?
I just agree.
Thank you. Any other question? Please. The microphone is there, okay. So, yeah.
Florian Chapelin from Ballard Power System. We are a supplier of fuel cells for heavy-duty vehicles. At the moment, we are a bit in a frustrating situation. We are speaking with OEMs, major ones, smaller ones, and the feedback we get when we talk about heavy-duty trucks with fuel cells is that they don't see any immediate demand for these type of vehicles. And therefore, because they don't see a pipeline, they don't want to invest in small series of vehicles. At the same time, when we attend this kind of event, I can probably find 10 hydrogen fuel cell, Hydrogen Valley developers here who are interested in this kind of vehicles. But somehow there is no match between the OEMs and all of these potential customers. So my question is not a question, it's more a plea to maybe the Clean Hydrogen Partnership or to the Valley developers here, is to actually show much more what you need in terms of technology, what you need in terms of vehicles, and there might be a possibility to accelerate a bit market uptake in that way, just by showing the demand bottom up instead of, waiting for any kind of national support or anything like that. Thank you very much.
Sorry, can I complement that? In view of the new MFF, the European Commission should also see ways to support end users, meaning fleet owners, etc., like it has been done for electrical cars, the current MFF, through cohesion funds, for example, to do the same for hydrogen heavy-duty vehicles, where it makes sense for, to give incentives to end users to buy cars. Thank you.
We actually had a discussion yesterday between the valleys that actually there is interest from almost all of them to know which OEMs are providing vehicles to the other valley, because we are all searching for vehicles. The cost, of course, is a big issue. Some of these vehicles are quite expensive, but there are, as I mentioned, there are incentive programs. For example, when we heard that MAN might be producing these large vehicles, originally they told us you have to buy 200. So what we did is that we grouped a Scandinavian delegation. We flew in with people from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland, and we went to MAN and we told them we can deploy 200 trucks in the Nordic countries. So we'll just buy all of them. And that actually kickstart the dialogue. Now actually most of them are going to the Netherlands, according to my information, but that's not the key issue. They decided to go forward. So I think actually there is a lot of interest from these valleys in different types of vehicles, because we need to support the infrastructure. And when I approached the truck operators, and they realized they were entering into a much more expensive activity than driving a diesel vehicle. I'm not telling them that they are participating now because they're going to make money. It's very important for the education. A 5 megawatt or 10 megawatt infrastructure does not change anything, but the learning has to be there. And they all agree that in the future, a large part of their trucks will be based on hydrogen or something else. The marine sector knows we're not going to sail and fish for 40 days on a freezing trawler on batteries. And I'm almost sure I will not fly on a battery plane to New York in the future. So that we need to develop this, and there was a discussion earlier today about skills and training. There is only a handful of people in Iceland at the moment who know anything about operating an electrolyzer, fixing a station, fixing a fuel cell car, fixing whatever. There's, I know the 3 guys I can call. That's it. So we need to train all these people so that we are able to operate this. And if we all wait until 2030, then suddenly we have to build 300 megawatts of electrolyzer and everybody's going to do it at the same time. Sorry, so we need to start. And even if IC engines are stupid, we have to start somewhere.
Thank you. That's a clear message for the OEMs, I guess, if there's anybody in the room as well, please.
Yeah, just adding to the MAN and why they sell to the Netherlands, I think I have an answer to that question, because it's not only MAN, it's also HyLane, which are going to sell Hyundai trucks in the Netherlands, and the reason is the Dutch subsidy program called SWIM, which is a pretty smart and good program, because it combines 2 things, right? First of all, subsidy to bridge the gap between diesel trucks and hydrogen trucks, and in addition, in combination, subsidies for the hydrogen fueling infrastructure. And we believe at MA Energy this is a model forward. That's also how we do it in Lübeck, but on a private initiative. Right? We sought out a deal with an OEM that will place a certain number of trucks in that particular region where we're going to build our hydrogen refueling station. And I think that this has to go hand in hand, which is not the case, for example, in Germany. Right? But the Dutch have been really smart here, and I think that triggers what we want to see, right? And once you have then the scale, then the subsidy can phase out over time. But at least that's how we view it.
I think we have time for one more question from.
Yeah. Hello, thank you for the exceptional panel. I'm Carmen Font, a CEO of Font Corporation. So my question is for you, Philipp. I think you brought to the table a very attractive formula in terms of cooperating with the OEMs, where you can, with your forces, joining forces with the sales teams, you can bring a valuable solution for the final client, right? So in Spain, as you might be aware, 98% of the exports go through heavy trucks, so they are massively crossing the Pyrenees to export goods and agri products and everything through all over Europe. So for us, it's very important indeed to decarbonize the fleets and the companies that are there, the big players that have over 6,000 trucks owned. They are very keen to decarbonize, but the first challenge is the price. So they acknowledge that they have to pay €500,000 for a truck, that this is an investment, and then what you do just with one truck. So you have like massively fleet of trucks behind it. So I spoke to several of them, and they were like, once we can have this solution where we can have a sort of leasing contract from an OEM and guaranteeing the price of the hydrogen, then we will be super interested. So please work on that, like sort of this sort of solution. So have you come across this type of solutions? So what do you see actually that works in the market at the moment?
Yeah, we work on this with the German truck OEM, and in fact the use case is to transport tomatoes from Granada to Copenhagen. So that's pretty much what what you are talking about. And why tomatoes? Because you still have then the additional energy need to cool the tomatoes in the back, right? And I can't disclose too many details, but that's exactly the concept, that the end customer wants a one-stop shop, right? So he wants to have the cost of the vehicle, the cost of the fuel, insurance, etc., all in one fee, and that could be a leasing fee, right? And that's another model which should ideally work because it reduces the complexity for the end customer, which was my previous point. It's not an off-the-shelf commodity sale what we're talking about here, right? So I fully agree with you, Valerie. I think that's a way to go. It probably requires some time because it's easier said than done, I would argue. But I think some of the OEMs have recognized that. They also think about becoming, and that's quite interesting, becoming an off-taker themselves. So that if you want us, for example, to build 100 refueling stations, we need a certain amount of certainty that we can sell the hydrogen. Well, and then you have these, as you mentioned, the trucking companies with very low margins. That is not really what I would call bankable. Right? So if you then have instead, at least for the first 5 years, a major OEM say, okay, dear Philipp, I'm your off-taker, and I, as the OEM, I sell a leasing formula, including the fuel, to my end customers. That would definitely fly, in our view. And I know that OEMs are thinking about this, but it's new for them. Right? It's totally different from what we're doing today. So, and I get it, but I think that could be a great solution. Yeah.
I think totally agree. There is indeed, Hemtron, for instance, in Germany is applying this sort of formula. They have become an off-taker, aiming to give the client at the end the truck and the hydrogen. Yeah. And I totally agree with Konstantinos. He was saying, obviously, some sort of incentive for the final customer that will help with a sort of a scheme, European scheme for for the clients, for the fleet, the companies that have all the trucks and need incentives to the carbon ester fleet. So I think that would be very much encouraging those big players to move forward on the carbon ester fleet progressively. So thank you so much, Philipp. Yes, indeed.
And maybe one comment and then I stop. If you then on top of that put a very simplified subsidy scheme such as a producer or a distributor of hydrogen gets a subsidy of, let's say, 3 to 4 euros a kilo, and you cap it at 1 million tons, right? That probably translates then, if you include green and blue, and for imports you want to give a lower discount, you have probably 3 to 4 billion to invest here as a government, but that is a real booster, because then it becomes also easier for the OEMs to become an off-taker, because also their risk is being reduced since the hydrogen is going to become cheaper. And if you do that for 7 to 10 years, not forever, right? But then you have the market there where you want to have it. You don't have the individual subsidy programs, which are, at least in Germany, very complicated. It would be a very straightforward solution this way. And I keep my fingers crossed it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, I think, for all your interventions and a very interesting discussion. And I guess our time is up. Time is up.